Assistant Minister for Social Security, Ageing and Women.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and what a wander through some of the pathways of the Shadow Treasurer's mind that was. Certainly in our 2.5 years in office, our government has been laser-focused on supporting Australians. We do know that times are difficult in Australian households, that people are under the pump from cost of living pressures and from higher interest rates. And it is important to look at the facts. Because when we came to office, inflation had a 6 in front of it, and it was rising. It now has a 2 in front of it. Now, that is not an accident. It is a result of very deliberate policies that our government has crafted to support Australian households with cost of living relief without adding to inflation, to ease cost of living pressures, to help people earn more and to keep more of what they earn. And while times are difficult, we are seeing progress. Real wages are now growing again, and they have grown for 4 consecutive quarters. The gender pay gap is at its lowest level on record, and that is a result of deliberate government policies. The pay rises that we've provided to aged care workers, the pay rises that we will provide to those in the early education sectors, highly feminised workplaces where women for too long have been underpaid and underappreciated. Our government has provided cost of living relief, a tax cut for every taxpayer, everyone, not just the wealthy. Energy bill relief for every household, cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare. We're cutting student debt. We are introducing fee-free TAFE as a permanent measure. And of course, unlike the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, who, when opposing this policy, said you don't value things if you don't pay for them, on this side of the House, we see education as a pathway to prosperity, and we want everyone to be able to benefit from it. We've been rebuilding our health system, and didn't it need rebuilding after the almost decade of those opposite who, once again, as we know, this is their track record when they get into government, they try and rip out the heart of Medicare. We have been doing the work to rebuild our health centre to make sure that Medicare is strengthened and sustainable into the future. We've opened 75 new Medicare urgent care clinics around the nation, including one in Heidelberg in the heart of my community. We've been boosting bulk billing so that more people can see a doctor for free when they need it. We've been making sure that our health system is based on having your Medicare card, not based on having your credit card. And of course, that was the policy under those opposite. So we do know that without the tax cuts, without the investments we were putting into our health system, without all of the ways that we are supporting Australians with cost of living help, Australian households would be much worse off. And of course, every single one of these measures that we have brought to this place, every single cost of living measure that we have brought has been opposed by those opposite. They even suggested we go to an election over our plans to deliver tax cuts. And that is why it is such a risk for Australian families, for Australian households, to look to those opposite to get us through these difficult times. They are not the people who will support households, who will support Australians with cost of living pressures. We have seen their record. Falling real wages, much higher inflation, huge deficits and, of course, much more debt. That's their record. That's what makes them risky. We will continue to do the responsible work to support Australians with cost of living measures, to do it in a way where we're not adding to inflation, to make Australians' lives easier, not harder. Deputy Speaker, it has been a bit of a slog for our government because those opposite have opposed us at every step of the way. Tax cuts. They opposed it. They said they'd reverse it. In fact, then they threatened an election over tax cuts for every taxpayer. And if I look at the impact of that in my household, in my electorate, that's 77,000 taxpayers just in Jagga Jagga, with an average tax cut of $1,762, who stand to lose under those opposite. Of course, they voted against cheaper medicines. 601,528 prescriptions in Jagga Jagga so far as a result of that policy. They voted against cheaper childcare, which is providing savings for 6,600 families in my community of Jagga Jagga. They voted against increasing the maximum rate of Commonwealth rent assistance, which is benefiting 3,285 households in Jagga Jagga. They voted against debt relief for students, which is benefiting 22,263 people with a help debt in my community. They voted against power bill relief. Of course, they are voting against our fee-free TAFE measures. They voted against a future made in Australia. They voted against the HAF. They don't want Australians to have houses. Every step of the way, those opposite have tried to block our government's efforts to make life easier for Australians. And while they've done this, they haven't really given us much of a sense of what they would actually do in government. We haven't seen their positive vision for how they would support Australians at this difficult time. One small piece, I suppose, is the fascination with nuclear energy. The plan to install nuclear plants in communities that don't seem to have been consulted at a cost of $600 billion to produce just 4% of Australia's energy by 2050. This is pretty much just climate denial wrapped up in yellow cake. This is not a policy. This is not something that is going to support Australians with the cost of electricity. This is a frolic, and that's pretty much it when it comes to policies that aren't just saying no. The track record is that the Liberals and Nationals block, they cut. They want to cut what is helping, they want to punish people who are struggling. They want to claw back the tax cuts we've delivered, close the Medicare urgent clinics we've opened. They want to stop the housing projects we've started, to push up the price of medicines, to take away the increases to rent assistance we've provided to Australian renters. And of course today we've once again had confirmation from the Shadow Minister that they will remove the Help to Buy scheme, the scheme that will help 40,000 Australians into home ownership. At this time, after all they failed to do when they were in government to solve the housing crisis, after the work they failed to do to make sure that we have the housing supply this country needs, they are looking to rip away that support from 40,000 Australians. And of course to rip away the pay rises and conditions of Australian workers. So in the absence of them putting positive policies on the table, I suppose we really have to look to those opposites' track record from when they were in government over that very long, nearly a decade. Well, if we look at the 2014 budget, I'm not sure if we would call it the golden years. In fact, widely regarded as the worst budget this country has ever seen. After then, Prime Minister Tony Abbott promised Australians no cuts to education, health and other areas on the eve of the 2013 federal election. What did he then want to deliver? $80 billion cut to health and education spending, of course a $7 co-payment for visiting the doctor, special straight from the then Minister for Health and now the Leader of the Opposition. Particularly that time that those opposite went after older Australians. They went after older Australians and those who rely on the pension. They wanted to increase the pension age to 70. They wanted to cut $1 billion from pensioner concessions. They tried to cut pension indexation. They axed the $900 seniors supplement to self-funded retirees receiving the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. They reset deeming rates thresholds, a cut which would have seen 500,000 part pensioners made worse off. And then just a year later, the Liberals and Nationals shamefully did a deal with the Greens to cut the pension to around 370,000 pensioners by as much as $12,000 a year by changing the pension assets test. Now, older Australians have not forgotten that record. They have not forgotten that those opposite look to cut the pension, that older Australians would be worse off under those opposite. They would not be supported with the cost of living relief they need and which this government is delivering. This government will continue to do the important work to support Australian households. We know that Australians cannot rely on those opposite who just continue to block, to oppose, and who fail to put any positive proposals on the table when it comes to delivering for Australians in our future.